Denton Community Television, operated by the Mayborn School of Journalism, the University of North Texas.
Brighten your day by watching the Time with Theresa television show. Whether in the studio or on location, Theresa Westbrook and guests will warm your heart and encourage your soul. And now, your host, Theresa Westbrook.
Now, you've also authored a book, The Father Effect, which tells your personal story more in detail as well. So what do you hope the readers will walk away with after reading this book?
You know, my hope is and prayer is that they walk away knowing and understanding they're not alone. They're not the only ones struggling with this issue, and that it is an epidemic much bigger than any of us understand or realize. And that God is able to give them hope and healing so that they see through my story. You know, I tell people all the time, look, if God can do this in me, he can do this in you and so much more. So that's our hope, is that God just starts healing families and for now and for generations to come, because it is a generational thing. The things that we're doing right now, we're putting into place that are going to impact generations to come. We're talking hundreds of generations. So for us to be willing to step up and say, no more of this in my life. I'm going to break the cycle, break the chains. I'm going to be the one to do things differently and positively and be a godly father for what I was created to be, right? In that man, doing the very best that I can with what I have. That's what it's all about.
And it is a cycle, just like domestic violence. A lot of things in life are a cycle, and what you see in your environment and everything. So you're saying there is hope to break that cycle?
Absolutely. You know, the key in all of this for me in finding forgiveness for my father was understanding and knowing he could not give what he did not have. The more I began to hear his story of growing up without a dad, his dad died when he was 9. His mom was married 5 times, didn't have a stable father figure, all of those things. He didn't have a chance. He really didn't. And so it was in the moment of forgiveness for me, it was, how can you be so bitter, resentful, and angry towards a man who didn't know how to be a father? That's where it all came together for me. And so for people to understand your dad is the way he is for a reason. And so many of the times it's because of something that was passed down through generations. And it's his normal. It's just all that he knew. And it's all he had in the way that he was able to father.
That's so true, John. That's so true. And it's very sad as well. So where do you think you'll be taking your book and your movie and your ministry to next, friend?
We are going into the prisons. It's exciting. We've got an opportunity. Right before the pandemic hit, we were scheduled to do a premiere in one of the prisons here in Texas, and the pandemic hit like 2 weeks beforehand. So we're pivoting and doing some things. I think eventually that will open up, but we're doing some other things, and opportunities are opening in other states to do prison ministry. But it's really just taking the message of hope and healing and forgiveness into the prisons and helping those people, inmates, both men and women, understand. You know, I had a prison chaplain tell me many years ago, he said, John, you say in your movie 9 out of 10 have a father wound. He said, and here it's 12 out of 10. He says, every single man and woman have a father issue. And that's in a lot of cases while they're here.
Wow. You're saying we can almost empty the correctional institutions if fathers become the fathers that God wants them to be to their children?
I think a big part of why we have incarceration and the young men that get incarcerated is because they're angry and they can't even tell you why. In most cases, I run into so many guys, even outside the walls of prison, that are angry and just can't tell you why. And so, yeah, there's an anger there. And I didn't know where my anger came from for years, but once I identified that, and it was the abandonment, just all the anger I had toward my dad, once I found healing for that, then man, I have nothing but love for my father and compassion now, when before it was just anger.
Well, tell me some of the things that you thought when you had the anger back during that time before you walked the road of redemption. What kind of things were you coming up with? What kind of excuses, what kind of reasons were you coming up with for your anger and your rage?
Oh, I loved living in the victim mentality, and that seems to be an epidemic too now. It has been for years. It's if we can stay in that victim mentality and live in it, and I love being there, because then all my actions and behavior I could blame on that. So my thing was, well, you don't know, my dad committed suicide. I had such a rough life, blah, 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 blah. Like everybody doesn't have a rough life, right? And so if I could blame everything on that, then it justified my drinking. It justified whatever I did. And so that alcohol really medicated that anger. It made it go away, at least temporarily. Sometimes it came out worse. I could be a mean drunk at times too, but sometimes it came out worse. But most of the time I was so angry at my dad for leaving me. How can a man leave his wife and 3 kids, choose to leave, right? And then I was mad at God because I thought God allowed my dad to leave. So I was just mad at everyone, everywhere. That was just my thing. And so it just started playing out in so many different aspects of my life, with my relationship with my wife, my kids, friends, all of those things. So I could justify just about any of my behavior any way I wanted to.
Yeah, I agree with that. Could you just share maybe a few identifiers to our parents that will be viewing this program? To view to identify in their children that their children may be feeling abandoned by a parent, or they may be feeling confused about a parent, or I put out some identifiers that there may be a problem with a parent.
If your child is a bully, if he's getting accused of being a bully and things like that at school, there's an issue there. And he's crying out in some way. Now, a lot of times he's seeing that bullying at home. So there's even some deeper concerns there because he's mirroring what he's seeing play out at home. So if he's a bully, if he's getting in trouble a lot at school, again, it's his way of, or her way of crying out, of wanting attention because they're not getting that fatherly love at home. If they're promiscuous, if they're having sex with young men, as far as the women are concerned, that's an issue with with not getting enough attention and affection from a father. One of the great stories that I tell all the time is Dr. Meg Meeker. She's a pediatrician by trade, best-selling author, and she tells this great story about these young girls that were having sex, and they were younger and younger and younger. It was 16 and 15 and 14 and 13. And she said, John, on more than one occasion, a young girl would come into my office. I would check her out. Everything would be fine. But before she left, she would say, hey, doctor, can you write me a prescription? And Dr. Meeker would say, you are totally fine. There is nothing wrong with you. And the young lady would say, I don't care. Just write me a prescription. And at the bottom of it, put cannot have sex. And she said, John, what was happening is these young girls were having sex at 13, 14, 15 years old. It wasn't physically or emotionally pleasurable, but it was the only positive, manly, fatherly love they were getting. They weren't getting that fatherly love, positive fatherly love from their dads. And so this was their permission slip to go take to Johnny to say, hey, I can't have sex anymore. So there's a lot to unpack there when it comes to young ladies and the effects of not having that dad. Again, a young lady that has that fatherly love is going to walk in a confidence and a courage that so many of the other ones don't.
Right. And see themselves as valuable and respect themselves. How about clinging, John? How about children who are clinging to a parent, trying to get affection from that parent? What is that saying?
Well, now some of that's age appropriate, obviously. Depending on when they're younger, it's just part of us being humans and who we are. But as they get older, you will, if you start to see some of that where a young daughter is especially clingy, let's say she's a teenager, because most teenagers aren't clingy. If she's a teenager, she's really clingy, either to mom or dad. There's just typically some underlying fear there, or really just self-image issues. There's several things that you could talk about there, but there's typically something there that's giving her a fear that she doesn't have that confidence and courage that those do that come along with just that the love that a father can give a young lady. And for a young lady to know she's loved, she's cherished, she's valued, she's pretty both inside and out. Dad's proud of her. He believes in her. All of those things. That's what a young lady needs. And so a lot of that, if they're clingy, they're not getting those things that reestablish and reaffirm them.
Mm-hmm. Or perhaps they feel something has come between them and their parent. Another outside situation, circumstance, or person has come between that, if it's changed over time. So my goodness, we're getting a lot of great information tonight, friend. And we've covered the movie, the Father Effect movie, and be sure to watch it this Father's Day free. And then John's given the information where you can see it after Father's Day. We've covered the Father Effect book. Now, where can they get the book at, John?
The book is also on my website at thefathereffect.com. It's also available, I think, pretty much everywhere else. I know it's on Amazon.
Okay. And I know that churches can reach out to you, organizations can reach out to you. Where do you want them to contact you?
They can also go to the website. Yeah, we've got contact buttons and everything on the website. I'm on social media at The Father Effect, pretty much anywhere. If you Google The Father Effect, most likely I'll come up somewhere across the social media platforms.
Well, you've certainly given us a lot to think about and such great information and such great advice. And we really appreciate you, John. And thank you for all that you're doing. And we wish you continued success. We'll talk more about some of the expansion of your ministry in our next segment that we'll be doing shortly. But thank you so much for coming tonight, John.
Thank you, Theresa. Always greatly appreciate you and your friendship.
Well, thank you, sir. And everyone stay tuned. There's more coming. All right. Praise God. Are y'all enjoying this, audience? We want to welcome Cindy, Nathan, Gina, Rhonda, Narda, Sheila, Linda, another Linda, Dana, and Jim. Thank you for coming. I hope you are enjoying this. Be sure to get your prayer requests, your questions, and your comments in for John. John, as you can see, is very easy to talk with. We're going to go on with our second segment and talk more about some of the resources that John has to offer you to become a better husband and a better father. But just jump right on in there, and we'll take your question and your comments, and maybe even have a little time of prayer. But we do want to get through this second segment as well. So, all right. I might have to do another TV intro, John. Okay.
That's fine. Are you hearing that thunder in the background?
I hear it here. Yeah, I hear it here. Yeah, we're hoping we can get to a little bit of comic relief eventually, but I don't know. We might have to be on after 9 to do all that. Oh. Welcome to Time with Theresa Around the World. I'm your host, Theresa Westbrook, and tonight's guest is John Finch, founder of The Perfect Father Ministry and author of The Father Effect and filmmaker of The Father Effect movie. You can find out more about those resources on the episode we did previously, and now we're going to expand more into John Finch's ministry and learn about some other resources that we can have. But welcome again, John.
Thank you, Theresa. Thanks for being on again.
Sometimes we just can't get it all done in a 28-minute show. Sometimes it takes much, much longer to get all this wonderful nuggets of gold in. But John, I understand that we kind of went over briefly about your story, your father committing suicide, spiraling out of control, of the long road of rage and anger that you went down. And then you walked down the road of redemption, gave your heart to the Lord, and now all of this has been birthed out of that. The Father Effect movie, the book, and the ministry. So now I want to talk about your new podcast that you have going on. Share with our viewers about that and what it's called.
So it's called The Father Effect, and it really has been such a blessing to see God do his thing, especially on Twitter. We've been blessed with a great following on Twitter and just a lot of people there. And it's just so cool to see the number of people that have responded to my emails and want to be on the podcast. And really, it's just sharing stories. It's the power of stories. You know, I believe everyone has a story, and it's in that story that God can do his thing. Through your story, there's nuggets that come out of that can speak to people that are listening and hearing. And so there's ways God can use that to really impact a lot of people. And so we've had some phenomenal guests, best-selling authors. We've had Richard Blackaby, who his dad, Henry, wrote the book Experiencing God. We've had Stephen Mansfield, best-selling author, who wrote The Faith of George Bush, The Faith of Barack Obama. He wrote a book about Trump, but he's got a really incredibly diverse background and very much into politics and a lot of other things. And you name it. We talked to the co-author who wrote a book with Gary Chapman. She didn't help him write The 5 Love Languages, but there's another book that they wrote together. And so it's been so cool to hear all the different stories and what God's been able to do through those stories.
Awesome. And did you tell the viewers how they can connect with you for the podcast?
Yes. So we're on pretty much all the podcast platforms. You just go and search The Father Effect, whether it's Spotify, iTunes, Stitcher, Google, wherever it is. You can just go search The Father Effect. And I think we're up to about 14 or 15 episodes now.
Awesome. So this is an additional resource to help men become better husbands and better fathers. Awesome.
Yes.
Awesome. Well, now, John, I do want to take a moment and share with the viewers. I, along with a writing team, are producing and going to be publishing a book, a ministry resource book. And it's going to have a compilation of many great stories, such as your story. And so you have contributed to that book, and I want to say thank you so much. And I do hope that we've got some things in your story, in this ministry resource book, that they won't find anywhere else.
Yes, I think there are. There's definitely some of my story in there that I haven't shared with others. And I'm thankful for the opportunity to do it, Theresa. Thank you for letting me be a part of it.
Oh, absolutely. It's a ministry resource book, and you're one of my top 10 ministries out there that I see a need for. And so the readers will be find it very interesting. Something about you that I found very interesting that would be surprising and interesting as well. So thank you so much for contributing to that. And I can't wait till we get it finished, because right now it is needed. It was so needed during this COVID-19 time, but we're doing our very best to get it out there. And I want to say special thanks to Tamara Roberts, because she has been right by my side helping me with this. And there's some other ladies lined up. Once me and Tammy can get it as far as we can get it, to pass on over to them to get it lined up to go to publishing. So everyone keep that in prayer, and I just want to keep you updated about that as well. So John, tell us a couple of interesting stories maybe really quickly, or one story real quickly. Great story that's come as a result of expanding into this podcast.
Wow. You know what? There's one story specifically in the movie, and I got to share this. In one of the interviews, we interviewed Neil Jeffrey. And Neil is I love this guy. He's got a passion for encouraging men, and he is an encourager of men. He's a pastor at Prestonwood Baptist Church. And he had this amazing story as I was interviewing him, he talked about the power of prayer and how his dad was this prayer warrior. And Neil was a quarterback, All-American quarterback at Baylor University, went on to play for the San Diego Chargers, just an incredible man of God. And so his dad was one of, I think, 5 or 6, and his dad was the only one that wasn't alcoholic. His dad took the path toward God and set that legacy in motion, broke that chain of what could have happened, that generational thing we talked about. And he just talked so much about his dad praying before and after football games and all these different things. And he said before, even if his dad wasn't there for a game, his dad would send him a little note that said, hey, just wanted to let you know I'm praying for you. Love, Daddy-O. And he said at one point, this is what really was a game changer for me. He said, John, there's nothing like a child hear his dad pray for him out loud by name in that manly fatherly voice. And that was something I went back home that night and implemented in my own home. And it does a couple of different things. It lets your kids see that you're taking their concerns and worries to the Father on their behalf. And it also leads to additional conversations. Why is it that you're struggling with this? Or why do you want me to pray about this? It leads to those really great conversations. And one of the most powerful things that I love to do, especially when my girls were younger, was when my wife was there in the room with us and for us to be praying and for me to just speak encouragement and love and blessing over my wife in front of my kids, to say, we are so blessed because we have an incredible mom who has a servant's heart, who loves us so much. I have an amazing wife. And so just for my girls to hear that and know that, there's very few things that are better than that.
Oh, I agree. That's awesome. It's such a blessing to have Christ as the head of every family. I mean, there's going to be hardships and everything, but man, what a blessing. There's going to be blessings that you don't experience otherwise without it. So praise God. Well, John, in light of your ministry, and I know we can't cover it all, but I do. What's going on in our world right now is we have a lot of looting and a lot of riots by younger people. And do you think these younger people that are expressing themselves this way have a father wound?
Oh, yeah. I think it is an epidemic. As I said, even before I started making the movie 8 years ago, it was so much bigger than I realized. And I think it's just as big today. And in some cases, maybe bigger. But it's these young people that are angry, don't know why. They don't have an engaged, involved dad. I mean, if you think through the common sense piece of this, if you're an engaged and involved father and you've been there and you're doing all the things that you can possibly do, odds are your son or daughter is not going to be out breaking into shops, looting shops, stealing things, that type of deal. Now, I think that's also a combination of, the pandemic, coming off the pandemic, people were housed up in closed quarters, all that stuff. So it's a combination of just needing to go do something and being young and just the way they are. But the anger is the root, I think, of so much of that. And you see it in the violence and just, man, it's so tragic and sad to see. But yeah, I truly believe the majority of that, if not all of it, is rooted in some type of father issue.
Yes, it's a road of destruction. I mean, it's very evident. It's a road of destruction. And we do pray that these young people will get on the road to redemption and the road to a positive life and a road to coping with things positively and see the change that they desire. Well, if they desire to see good, positive changes, now if they're just desiring to see where it's just easy for them to steal things, then that's not the right motive. But we do pray that they will get on the road to redemption in their life and to a better life. We certainly do. Just want to share some of the comments with you, John, tonight. Good stuff from Nathan, and thanks. Abandonment, birth, rejection. They walk hand in hand from our friend Narda. So thanks for your comments, and y'all continue to stay with us, John. We're going to hope that we have time for John to offer a prayer over everyone that's watching. So right now is the time to get your prayer request in and your comments in and your questions in. Well, John, continuing along the lines with the father, which we've been really focusing on tonight, name at least, let's give the viewers at least 3 things that they can do this week, begin this week, that will really make a positive impact on their children.
So as a man, as a father, it's about intentionally and purposefully loving your wife in front of your kids. That's so important for your kids to see that mom and dad love one another. It's one less thing they have to worry about when they walk out the door during the day. So love and hug and kiss on your wife. Show them and understand that you are modeling what they will expect as a young lady to marry and date as they get older. And you're modeling what that young man is going to believe he himself is going to be like. So that's important. The second thing is share a little bit of your story. I think every child, even as grown adults, our fathers, I love hearing stories about my dad to this day. Share little bits and pieces about how you grew up. What was your favorite ice cream, your favorite candy? Who was your best friend? It's in those conversations that we're able to bond with our kids in ways that we never would otherwise. And they get to see that we're human, that we're imperfect, that we're just more than dad. And it's in those conversations there's an intimacy to where they see and understand, wow, now I kind of see why dad is the way he is. What kind of pieced all that together and how he was shaped and molded growing up and the impacts of that. And then the third thing is when you mess up, ask for forgiveness. Have that personal, private conversation with your child. Tell them the truth. Look, I was having a bad day. I lost my temper, whatever it is. But have that conversation with them. Ask for forgiveness. That does a couple of different things. Shows them you're not perfect because they're going to find out anyway. And it also makes them understand they don't have to be perfect. There's not some incredible, unattainable benchmark. And that they can come to you when they've messed up and ask for forgiveness.
That's great, John. That's awesome. Well, now you know your lovely wife, Michelle. She went through the beginning of this journey with you and experienced a lot of the old John before the new John came along, the new man came along. So share with us what she has had to say to seeing right before her eyes this powerful transition that's come and transformation that's come into your life.
You know, she got to see the jerk John. I was a jerk. I was the do-nothing husband. I was the alcoholic. I would come home from the road, be hungover, not want to deal with the kids. Most of the time, my kids were babies at this point. So you can imagine that scenario. So our relationship wasn't good, and I just wasn't the man or the husband I needed to be. She told me a story not long into this transformation what God was doing in my life. I asked her, I said, honey, do you have any regrets? And she said, the only regret I have is that the John Finch I know today was not the John Finch for the first 14 years of our marriage. And so it was bittersweet, but it was the truth. You know, I was glad that God's given me a second chance to become the man, father, and husband He created me to be. I'm still not perfect in any way. I still mess up all the time. Thankfully, my wife decided to stick around and man, I cannot say enough about her. I am so thankful that she has stood beside me through all my stuff. But most importantly, she has seen the change and understands it's God, because there's no way this could have happened without Him.
Thanks for watching the Time with Theresa television show. For guest and sponsorship opportunities, contact Theresa today.
Denton Community Television, operated by the Mayborn School of Journalism, the University of North Texas.